Hey everyone, my name is Rouge, and welcome to I Am Beauty and the Beast. I created this show because over the last 5 years, I have been undergoing the biggest metamorphosis, the biggest changes and growth of my life, and I'm 37 years old. I jumped into a marriage in my early 20s, got stuck in a toxic dynamic for about a decade, got out of it, divorced, became lost, alone, grieving, confused, but at the same time, confronting my inner self, growing my inner self through the years of trial and error, therapy, and powering through the good and bad days, or crying myself to sleep. I'm not a therapist or a doctor, but I'm someone who's been through the ringer. I've been chewed up and spit out, and yet I am now the happiest and most fulfilled I've ever been. I run a successful creative business. I have multiple hobbies that I love, friends that I cherish and who cherish me, family I can count on, and two amazing kids that challenge me to be, my best every day. I want to be a role model for them. I'm here sharing my journey and the lessons I've learned so that others may realize that they're not alone. There's hope for you. There's a beautiful life ahead of you, and it doesn't have to be some magical, distant fairy tale. It can be your real life. So here we go. Hello and welcome to episode 4. I'm going to talk about how my hobby saved my life. For someone else, it might not be so dramatic or life-altering to have a hobby, but I think there are multiple messages in this episode that can serve as both a warning and a beacon of hope, depending on who's listening and how you might be able to relate. Going back in time, ever since I was a little girl, I dreamt of being a teacher. I would have a classroom full of stuffed animals or imaginary students, and I would teach them made-up words and math formulas. I would have my overhead projector, my pretend overhead projector, and my marker, and I would be standing, pretending to be teaching a class. So, yeah. I was really into it. And I wanted to be a teacher. That was what I wanted to do growing up. I was okay with not making 6 figures. I was okay with having a job that didn't pay very well because it meant something more to me. It would give me a sense of purpose and making a difference. So when I did finally get my teaching job, it really did fill me up with a lot of happiness and joy. I created a bond with my students unlike anything else. It just gave me a sense of purpose, and being able to make a difference was very rewarding. Also, it exercised my mind. It helped my husband and I pay the mortgage. It helped make car payments. Along with my then husband's income plus mine, we were able to get debt-free before my daughter was even born. So having a job really just felt like a part of me, having a teaching job. And I couldn't imagine doing anything else, ever. Then my son was born 21 months later, after my daughter's birth, and it was then that we decided that I'd stay home to raise the kids. The cost and quality of daycare versus me being home was what we kind of weighed, and we decided that it would just make a lot more sense for me to be home with the kids rather than keep teaching and basically using all of my income to pay for daycare. At first, I really liked the time and the freedom of being a stay-at-home mom / housewife. I didn't have to wake up at 4:30 a.m. anymore and not get home till 6, because that's what it was like as a teacher. And then I still had to grade papers, still had to write lesson plans. I was stressing out about work and not living in the present. So even if we were hanging out, doing something fun, I couldn't enjoy my time, my weekend, because I was thinking about all of the things I had to do going back to school the next week. So my weekends were basically non-existent. So yeah, I enjoyed being home for many reasons and not having to worry about a teaching job. On the other side, though, I did not have any source of fulfillment, purpose, or value except as a mother and a housewife. That is all my world became. was those two things. And the only social life was based on my interactions with my husband, and once in a while, my family would come to visit. I barely ever went out. I didn't have, friends to go out with. So my whole world revolved around those two roles of mom and wife. And the conflict in the marriage just continued to build. On the outside, it looked like I had everything. I remember once a friend said to me, I don't know why you're sad. Like, you have a husband, you have a house, you have two kids, you have a car, you go on vacations. You have so much to be thankful for. But I didn't feel that. I didn't feel happiness because there was something really, really missing. So when my son was a little bit older, I tried to do some small projects or follow my interests in painting. I considered teaching in a preschool, but the pay would be abysmal and the work would still be stressful. So I didn't want to go that route of preschool teacher because the idea was I should still be able to take care of the kids somehow. Whatever I do, I still need to be able to take care of the kids and be a wife. So I tried selling paintings on Etsy. I loved painting. I still do enjoy painting. And I thought, well, maybe I can make paintings and sell those, make some money from that. But my husband didn't like the cost, and he began complaining about how much money I was spending on painting supplies, discouraging that as a hobby that I would try and sell things. So I gave that up. He did encourage me to finish a children's book that I had started. So I wrote a poem, and he said it was a great poem, that I should make it into a book, and I did. And I did illustrations, and I self-published this book, this children's book, and that was a lot of fun. I visited schools with a little puppet, a little pirate puppet, and my guitar with songs I made up to teach them lessons about writing and reading. And yeah, it was fun, but it was not a source of income, and it was very inconsistent. It wasn't like I was selling hundreds of copies of my book. It didn't quite fill that hole that I was feeling, that void of like having a sense of purpose. Don't get me wrong, parenting is freaking hard. It is so demanding, it is so challenging in so many different ways, and it's also extremely rewarding. Some people excel at it. Some people are wonderful stay-at-home parents and housewives and all of that. Like they were made for this role. They get a lot of joy and fulfillment out of it. For me, because the marriage wasn't even that great, actually was in really bad shape, that I needed something for myself. And so I tried those few different things. But because my little hobbies, my little projects weren't really bringing me any income, I still felt reliant and dependent on someone else. The conflict in the marriage was going on. I didn't feel self-sufficient. I felt depressed. I didn't know at the time what I was going through, but looking back, I remember not feeling joy and happiness in the day-to-day things. You know how you just feel happy from the core? Maybe you're familiar with that, just pure happiness. I barely ever felt that. Even when I was hanging out with my kids, I was zoned out. I was just checked out. I couldn't enjoy myself with them because I was depressed. I looked my worst. I was in survival mode when I was a housewife and stay-at-home mom. I was in survival mode. I was just trying to stay afloat. I was just trying to stay on top of things. I would tidy up, and the kids would dump all the toys out, and then I still had to feed them. I still had to prepare meals for the whole family and make sure everything was tidied up before my husband got home, because if it wasn't, then he would ask me, what were you doing all day? you know Things like that, which if you've never been a stay-at-home parent and then you come home and the house is a disaster, you're like, what? Why does the house look like this? Did you even do anything? I hope that's not the case for you, but maybe you've heard that before. Anyway, I looked horrible. I didn't take care of myself because the budget was too restrictive, And I could really only spend money on food for the household and on the kids. And even then, it was like the essentials that they needed. Needless to say, I started to feel pretty worthless. I felt ugly. And I would look in the mirror and I would just cry looking at my reflection like, man, I'm so ugly. I have nothing. I am nothing. I have no purpose. I have no talents. You tried to sell paintings, nobody wants them. You try to write a book, who cares? You can't really play the guitar. You can't really play the piano. You're not really a good singer. You're not even that good at being a mom or a wife. Like, look, your husband's so unhappy with what you do. So I just hated myself. And then on top of that, I hated myself for hating myself. And I just felt pathetic. At a few points, I wondered if it was just better to be dead so I wouldn't have to be reminded of how pathetic I was every day I looked at myself in the mirror. That is an awful, awful feeling. And I hope anyone listening to this has never felt that. But if you have, I feel you. If you ever have these thoughts, of course, there's help out there so you don't have to feel alone. That's the state that I was in, was just depressed. Anyway, there was still this tiny little fire inside of me that I needed to do something, so I wasn't completely going to give up on it. And I knew I needed to be there for my parents, actually. I knew my parents loved me and they would be devastated if anything ever happened to me. I knew my kids needed me. I couldn't just, disappear. Even if I wanted to, I couldn't disappear. So I would just keep trying. I had this new idea of photography. So when I was teaching, I became friends with a substitute teacher, and she did photography on the side sometimes, and she would share her work on Facebook. I also saw people posting that they're looking for a photographer for family pictures or newborn pictures or for a wedding. And I thought, well, shoot, we have a camera. I might be able to take pictures. So I decided just watch some YouTube videos, and I decided to learn how to shoot in manual mode with the Canon Rebel T1i, which at that time was 6 years old. And there was a $50 lens available on Amazon. It's a nifty 50 millimeter lens. And so I got the 50 millimeter lens and I plugged it into the Canon Rebel, learned how to shoot in manual mode, experimented with objects, and then I started practicing on taking pictures of the family at the park, kids on the swing, things like that. Then when I felt comfortable enough controlling the camera, I made a post on a Facebook garage sale group that I'm looking to build my portfolio. $20 if they wanted more than 5 pictures. I asked my husband if that was okay and if he could watch the kids while I did that, and he agreed. I remember my first 3 photo shoots in 2017 in the middle of the day, which is not when you're supposed to take pictures, right? So I set up my first few photo shoots, and the first one was February in the middle of the day, and it was this family of 3, this mom with her 2 boys, and one of the younger boy was just bouncing off the walls outside. I guess they don't really have walls at the park, but he was running around everywhere. But I had fun. It was challenging, but it was fun, and I made $40 that day. There was another shoot I also set up really early on for a mom with a potentially terminal illness. She had something going on with her liver, if I'm not mistaken, and it was going to be pictures of her with her 9-year-old daughter. And I still remember those pictures. They are some of my favorite pictures. If I look back, I can really remember those. Doing that photo session and then looking at my work, it just gave me a sense of fulfillment and awe. And I was just charging $20. So it wasn't about the money. It was, wow, this photography thing, it means something. The little bit of money was nice too. So I took on more shoots. My calendar started filling up through word of mouth, through those garage sale group posts. And then I just gradually raised my prices, and my calendar still filled up. So I would raise my prices a little bit more and my calendar would fill up again. I created a website, I created a Facebook page, I registered as a business right from the beginning. And when my husband saw that it was actually, making some money, he said, "Why don't you just get the best camera out there? And in the worst case, even if this business thing doesn't work out, we'll still have a great family camera." I'm like, "Okay, well, all right." So he put the camera on his credit card, and I was able to pay that back within less than a year of being in business. I was able to pay back the cost of the camera. And the business really started to pick up traction. People were reaching out, they were telling their friends and family about me. My calendar got even more filled up. And I decided to invest in online classes, better photography gear. My husband helped me set up the studio in my home that I'm still running to this day. I mean, I've made a lot of changes since then, back in 2017, but I'm still using my home studio and I got more business. So it just kind of started to snowball. I started to get my confidence back. Remember, I was feeling like I had no purpose, that I was a complete waste of space. But now I had a sense of purpose and it felt challenging enough at just the right level that I actually, when I did a good job, I started to feel like, hey, maybe I'm good at something. And people were paying me, so that must mean I'm good at it, right? If people are willing to put their money on it, on my work, it must mean something. The other nice thing was I was able to start contributing to the family's overall income. It wasn't much at all, but it was still giving me that sense of purpose back. And so I started to feel better about myself. Unfortunately, the trouble within the marriage suddenly got worse. Told me to put photography on hold. But by this point, I refused to quit. I finally had something that was mine and it gave me a purpose. I was willing to fight for it. It made me burn even brighter and hotter rather than snuff me out or shut me down. I had stronger boundaries and I had more self-worth, so I was less tolerant of negativity coming from anyone, but especially from my husband. Unfortunately, as my business was really starting to get traction and pick up, my marriage hit a new unbelievable low. But this time was just different enough where I felt, okay, enough is enough. This is not working for me. I had saved up enough that I knew that I'd at least survive, and I had enough support from my family that I knew I wouldn't be homeless. So I was finally in a place where I felt courageous enough to make one of the most difficult decisions to this day of my life. I filed for divorce in 2018 and started living on my own towards the end of 2018 with my kids half the time. That was a big learning curve for me, where I had so much to learn that I'd never done before. But I continued photography. I continued raising my prices so I could pay the bills on my own. And I thought, if I can run my business, I can figure out how to pay the bills and run the house too, even if it was hard. There was a chain effect to this, or like a chain reaction, where it was something like this. If I can take good pictures, I can start a photography business. If I can start a photography business, I can support myself. If I can support myself, then I don't need someone else for my survival. If I don't need someone else for my survival, I can figure out how to become self-sufficient in even more ways. And if I can be self-sufficient, then I don't need to be rescued or saved, which means I don't have to settle ever again. Then I can choose with whom and how I want to live my life. If I can do all this, then holy shit, I'm an effing force to be reckoned with. I am a beast. I can do hard shit. I can thrive. I can take care of myself. I can live my life on my own terms. I'm in control. Does this mean I don't screw up? No. Is my life rainbows and butterflies now? Nope. What it does mean though is I have proven to myself that I am doing my best, that I am strong, I am capable. I didn't even know I was capable of any of the things I've done since the divorce, but I've proven to myself that I am. And I can do things that I thought were impossible. I can learn. I can grow. I can change. I can actually freaking love myself for once. I don't have to be perfect, but it's part of being human, understanding that I'm not perfect and it's okay. Now, does this mean I want everyone listening to go buy a camera? Absolutely not. That's not what this means. It means I want you to realize that if there's an emptiness in your heart, if you have this feeling like, man, something is missing, dig deep. Use your support system, like I talked about in episode 2, and figure out what's missing. There's a very good possibility that that sense of emptiness is coming from not answering to what you have been called to do, or you haven't heard that call yet. So I want you to find your passion. You're not going to find your passion in one day. If you do, fantastic. That's great. If you're that lucky, okay. But it's not going to happen overnight. Your hobby also doesn't have to be business related at all. Mine happened to be a business related hobby that I turned into a source of income for myself. But finding a hobby or making sure you have interests that bring you joy and happiness doesn't have to be a source of income. You may have a job already that you like or that, that you're okay with. It's not about, making money from it. It's about finding something for you. You have to be willing to step outside your comfort zone, though. You have to be willing to learn something new. You have to be willing to screw up, make mistakes, and learn from them. You have to be willing to get frustrated when it's hard, but not give up. If it speaks to you, if you want to reach a goal, you have to be willing to fight for it. You also have to be willing to walk away when it no longer speaks to your heart, which is different from giving up because you've hit a temporary roadblock. So you have to be willing to do hard things and not give up easily. Because believe me, I had some challenges with photography. My equipment malfunctioned a few times during photo shoots, or I had clients that were unhappy. It doesn't happen often, but sometimes it does. It's part of any interest in life. There will be roadblocks. Another big thing, you have to make time. There are 1,000 excuses for why you can't do something. You only need one for why you must. Your life. Okay? Do it for your joy, your happiness. When you're happy, you have energy, you have purpose, you have drive. You'll even find yourself being more patient. You'll just have more life to you. When you choose yourself and fill your own bucket using an interest like a hobby, you are a better friend. You can be a better parent. You can be a better spouse, a better employee, or a boss, and on and on. When you're taking care of your sense of fulfillment, it makes you a better person in every other area of your life. It is totally worth the time. I know it's hard to make time. I get it. Especially if you are a mom, you have kids in sports, you also have a job, your weekends are always full. I get it. But your life depends on it. And in order for you to be the best version of yourself, you have to take care of this need, this sense of purpose. You have to have that sense of purpose in your life, something that brings you joy, that is only for you. You don't do it for someone else. Here's the biggest thing that has been a mental roadblock for me for decades. This hobby of yours, this is not for your neighbor's satisfaction. It's not for Instagram followers. It's not even for your own family members. It's definitely not something you need to do for America's Got Talent or American Idol. It doesn't need to be for anyone else. When you do it for yourself, no one else can take it away from you. No one else can take away the pleasure and joy and fulfillment that your hobby brings to you. What you learn, the lessons you learn, the skills you learn, the satisfaction you get from completing things and getting better at your interest or hobby, nothing and no one can take that away from you. That stays with you wherever you go. I hope you enjoyed this episode. I hope you feel a little bit more pumped up about going and finding something for yourself, or maybe going back to something that you may have enjoyed but abandoned. Keep working on finding that inner beauty and that inner beast, and I will see you next time.